A very good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News, where we get you the big stories of the day, the developing stories. Let's start with the headlines. Grand welcome for Benjamin Netanyahu in Ahmedabad. Prime Minister Modi receives him and his wife at the airport. Cultural extravaganza on display for the visiting dignitary. An 8-kilometer roadshow by two leaders till Sabarmati Ashram. Prime Minister Modi and Netanyahu pay homage to the father of the nation. Israeli Prime Minister terms Mahatma Gandhi one of humanity's great prophets of inspiration. Prime Minister Modi and Netanyahu to inaugurate the new campus of I Create Center to nurture entrepreneurs. Center set up to provide funds, space, mentors and other facilities. In other news, Supreme Court agrees to hear plea by producers of Bollywood film Padmavat. Producers move the court against ban imposed on films released by several states. And India is 252 runs away from a win on the fifth and final day of the second test against South Africa at the Centurion, aim to level the three-match series that hosts lead 1-0. Our top story today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is on a day-long trip to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's home state, Gujarat, and the state rolled out a red carpet for the visiting dignitaries. Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself welcomed and received Netanyahu and his wife Sarah at the airport. The Israeli Prime Minister and his wife were accorded a grand welcome at the Sardar Patel International Airport with a song and dance reception with folk dancers performing to traditional Gujarati beats. From the airport, Prime Minister Modi and Netanyahu and his wife embarked on an 8-kilometer long roadshow in the motorcade to Sabarmati Ashram. The entire stretch for the roadshow was decked up to welcome Netanyahu and his wife. 50 stages were erected on the way to showcase performances by troops of different states to welcome the guests. Thousands of people lined up on the route that the two leaders took. Heavy security was deployed on the entire stretch, including Israeli snipers. And the roadshow concluded at Sabarmati Ashram, where Israeli Prime Minister and his wife tried their hands at weaving khadi on a charkha. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and his wife paid their tributes to Mahatma Gandhi at Sabarmati Ashram. And then Prime Minister Modi, Benjamin Netanyahu and his wife Sarah also flew a kite together at the lawns of the ashram. Signing the guest book, Israeli Prime Minister and his wife called Mahatma Gandhi humanity's great prophets of inspiration. Our assistant editor Akhilesh Suman continues to join us on this particular event and giving us an idea, of course, of the significance of it. Joining us in studio here, Akhilesh, good afternoon. It's been an interesting morning, and now it's going to be an even more eventful day ahead.
Right.
At the inauguration of I Create, which was something that Narendra Modi started off when he was the Gujarat CM.
Yeah. Really, I Create is one of the major things that India has done. I can tell you that it is like what we are telling, like incubator of thought, mind and economy. It is something to give preference to individual enterprising capacity, that see, if you have some ideas, you need money and you need some place to think about it and do something with the allied technology. Here is a place, and this is a place that I Create has been created when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was there as a Chief Minister. And I will also remind you that in 2006, Prime Minister Narendra Modi even visited Israel when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat. So he has a very strong connect with Israeli's innovation capacities and the youth of Israel, who was, as compared to Indian youth, their number is so minuscule.
Yes.
But they have created a flutter in the whole world, and after USA, Israel is the second country where most of the innovations are coming out. So you can see that now discovery, innovation has taken place of discovery. But what discovery was all about earlier, that you have something given and you are finding something out of it. So now it is innovation, and innovation for every public use. Like in agriculture, if farmers are having problem in correlating the fertilizer with water, that how much fertilizer is required in this proportion of water, in this weather and in this temperature, you can get some innovative app on your mobile that you can put the data on it, and farmer will get, yes, this much fertilizer I should put, so that there should be no overuse of fertilizer. And you know that fertilizer overuse is so dangerous to our whole body, and you know that Punjab and Haryana states that has been using lot of fertilizer. There is now cancer zone, that people are getting cancer out of it. So India has to be very cautious about it, and Israelis youth are showing us the way that how you can innovate sitting in your countryside. So this is one of the examples I am giving to going to give you about it.
And it's interesting you mentioned about how in 2006 Narendra Modi visited in the capacity as a Gujarat Chief Minister, and clearly he was impressed. Clearly he realized there was much that we could get from that particular nation, and you know, this is a relationship that he has pursued then further on after becoming Prime Minister, and it's a relationship that he has nurtured, which he has allowed even the Israeli side to nurture, and we are seeing really a new change in the relationship, a step up, in fact, of relationship between both sides now, between Netanyahu and Narendra Modi too.
Yeah, this is how Narendra Modi works with the diplomats, and he has innovated his own ideas. Like he also a politician of innovations, and he has given his own style on diplomacy in India, and this style is to correlate with the political leaders with heart, with mind, and give them proper time to converse with you, so that there are some issues that you cannot discuss in a formatted manner. You can discuss with an informal manner, and that is why this whole exercise, that now you are seeing a guide as Prime Minister of India and guiding tourists of Israel's Prime Minister. So and in between they will have they are having opportune time that they will sit and talk about tricky issues. So you know, India's challenges before India is tremendous, that you have to correlate with the small countries, you have to relate with big countries, you have to relate with one Arabian part, then you have to need Israelis' expertise and experience also, and also that balancing the world in a way that there should be a justiciable society, because people of the world had been loving and appreciating India for our principal position, and our principal position should be and is still that Prime Minister talks about Palestine, that there should be a Palestine nation, and Prime Minister also talks that Israel should be given proper respect in the world for their expertise, for their achievement, and they should be utilized in the whole development of the world and region. So this is how India is balancing, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, what we are seeing from the very early in the morning today, that he is accompanying the Israeli Prime Minister on the road, in the car, when he is waving on the people. So he is giving a message to the people of India also, that see, there is a friend in our town, and there is friend in our country, and we have to respect this friend. And why this friend is important, we are telling from our studio, and our media is also telling. So it is a way that how you communicate with the people, that he is not only just my personal friend, he is friend of India, and we have to get their expertise. So I think this is the message Prime Minister is giving.
Absolutely. As far as nurturing friendships go, we are also going to be nurturing entrepreneurship, which we are going to be seeing, of course, in a short while from now, because apart from that roadshow in Ahmedabad, the big event there will be that the two leaders inaugurating the newly built iCreate Center at Diodholera village and dedicating it to the nation. Formally launched in 2011 by Narendra Modi, he was the Gujarat Chief Minister. iCreate was actually set up to nurture entrepreneurs by providing them with funds, and as Akhilesh Suman just said, space and mentors and other facilities as well to nurture these entrepreneurs. The two Prime Ministers will also recognize and award 38 entrepreneurial projects from two countries and interact with innovators and startup CEOs. Now, the visiting Israeli Prime Minister will present the Prime Minister Modi with a special gift, which will be a mobile water desalinization and purification jeep, which the two leaders rode on Israel's Olga Beach last year, if you remember. There will be a live demonstration of desalinization of seawater that the two Prime Ministers will witness through video conferencing from the iCreate Center. The two leaders will also visit the Centre of Excellence for Vegetables at Vadrad in Banaskantha district, where they will be briefed on work plan of the centre, and they will inaugurate the Centre of Excellence for Date Palms at Kutch district through a video link. The two Prime Ministers will also interact with farmers, and Prime Minister Netanyahu will then later depart for Mumbai. Now remember, Netanyahu is on a 6-day visit to India, and on Tuesday, the Israeli Prime Minister hailed Prime Minister Narendra Modi's efforts in improving the ease of doing business in the country. He also said that he believed in India and its potential. Inaugurating the 3rd edition of the geopolitical conference, Rajya Dialogue in the national capital, he stressed upon the need for greater cooperation between the two nations. He further added that the main job of both India and Israel is to cut bureaucratic delays. On Indo-Israel ties, Netanyahu said that the alliance of democracies is important to secure a common future and that the possibilities are endless. Prime Minister Modi had also attended the event.
The weak don't survive. The strong survive. You make peace with the strong. You make alliances with the strong. You're able to maintain peace by being strong. And therefore, the first requirement of Israel from the time of our first Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion, was to achieve the minimal strength that is required to assure our existence. Now, what is the source of strength? Various questions arise about what is the nature of power. There's soft power, there's hard power. I like soft power. Hard power is often better. What does it mean? What does it mean to have power? Well, the first prerequisite is military power. You need F-35s, you need submarines, you need interceptors, you need cyber, you need intelligence. If you want to have economic power, you must reduce taxes, simplify taxes, and you must cut bureaucracy. Government can facilitate economic growth. Government can block economic growth. In our cases, Israel and India, we don't have any bureaucracy to contend with. You know that. So a main job of the leaders of both India and Israel is to reduce this bureaucracy, to cut it, as I call it, with a machete, with an axe, so that the firms can go on with their business of doing business. This gives strength. We've done this in Israel.
We'll continue tracking, of course, Netanyahu's visit to Gujarat, and we'll track all those developments that are coming out of the iCreate Center when they reach there. Meanwhile, let's take you through the other news as well of the day. Army Chief General Bipin Rawat has said that it is important to put checks and curbs on internet and social media to counter terrorism. Speaking at the Rajya Dialogue today, General Rawat said that even though democratic countries do not favor curbing the internet, but it is necessary for the safety and security.
Checks and curbs on the population, on the internet, on the social media and the social communication which terrorist organizations always resort to. I do appreciate that in a democratic country, the people would not like this kind of restriction to be put on them. But then I think we have to take a call on whether we want a safe and secure environment, or we are willing to accept some kind of curbs, at least temporarily, so that the menace of terrorism can be dealt with in a holistic manner. Is to identify nations which have a state-sponsored policy of supporting terrorism. There can be two ways about it. There can be no two ways about this. That any state, any nation state that supports terrorism to achieve its means to an end needs to be tackled with first.
With a quick break here, up next we'll get you more national stories. Stay with us.
A deadline of March 31st, 2018 has been set to link your Aadhaar with the bank accounts. Now when you have these virtual IDs and for which you have a deadline of June, is this deadline going to change in any way?
The government has always been very, accommodative. If I were to decide that, maybe I could have given you some definitive answer.
You have a number of insecurities when it comes to the data breaches which have come across. Then you recently had a Tribune case.
Aadhaar number is not a secret information because Aadhaar number is in your ID card and you are supposed to be giving your ID card to everywhere, wherever it is demanded.
Now, about 8 years later, we are talking about firewalls like virtual IDs. We are talking about facial recognition. Isn't this something which could have been planned much earlier?
Actually, we had thought about it in 2009-10 at that time. But then that time, our own internal view was that, at this point of time, it will perhaps create more confusion.
Watch to the point with Unique Identification Authority of India CEO, Dr. Ajay Bhushan Pandey on Rajya Sabha television. Mihir Sen, an outstanding and extraordinary saltwater swimmer of India. He's the first Asian to swim the English Channel way back in 1958. And just 8 years later, in 1966, he swam the 7 seas of the 5 continents in 1 calendar year, which etched his name in the Guinness Book of World Records. In 1959, he was also conferred the Padma Shri, and in 1967, he was awarded the Padma Bhushan.
A path-breaking initiative on Indian television. A show you must watch. The Election Commission of India and Rajya Sabha TV present National Elections Quiz. Coming soon.
Welcome back to the Midday News. In more national news, the Supreme Court has agreed to hear the plea of producers of the Bollywood movie Padmavat against the ban imposed on it by some state governments. After being involved in controversy for months, Padmavat, which was originally titled Padmavati, was cleared by the censor board. However, despite the clearance by the censor board, the film has been banned in several states, including Rajasthan, Gujarat, Haryana and Madhya Pradesh. The makers of the film had challenged the ban imposed on the film, and the Supreme Court hearing is scheduled for Thursday. The movie is scheduled to be released on the 25th of January. Meanwhile, hearing on the case challenging the constitutional validity of the Aadhaar Act has begun in Supreme Court from today. The hearing began before the Supreme Court's 5-judge Constitution bench headed by the Chief Justice of India. Apart from Aadhaar cases, the bench will also hear 7 other crucial cases. The Supreme Court had earlier announced the composition of a 5-judge Constitution bench to hear the major cases. So apart from Aadhaar, the other issues include cases challenging the 2013 Apex Court judgment recriminalizing gay sex between consenting adults. Also, hearing on the ban on the entry of women between 10 and 50 years of age in Kerala's Sabrimala temple, and whether a Parsi woman would lose her religious identity if she marries a man from a different religion. That will be done as well. Another contentious matter relates to the challenge of validity of a penal law on adultery, which only punishes a married man for having an extramarital sexual relationship with a woman married to someone else. The other issues to be dealt with by Constitution bench include the pleas, which have raised a question as to when will a lawmaker facing criminal trial stand disqualified. ISRO released the first image captured by Cartosat-2 series satellite. The image is a part of Indore city with the Holkar Cricket Stadium in the centre. The image was captured by the satellite on the 15th January. Cartosat-2 was launched on the 12th of January aboard the PSLV C-40 from Sriharikota. The satellite is the 7th in the remote sensing Cartosat series. The images relayed by the satellite will be valuable for cartographic applications, urban and rural applications, coastal land use and regulation, utility management like road network monitoring, water distribution, as well as geographical information system applications. Pakistani Prime Minister Shahid Khaqan Abbasi has said that no action can be taken against terrorist Hafiz Saeed as there is no case against him. Referring to Saeed as Sahib or Sir, Abbasi in an interview to a Pakistani channel said, and I quote, that there is no case against Hafiz Saeed Sahib in Pakistan. If there were a case, action would have been taken. Action is taken when there is a case registered against someone, unquote. Now, earlier this month, Pakistan blacklisted Saeed's terror organization Jamaat-ud-Dawa and several others after the United States suspended security aid to the country. Saeed, who was under house arrest in Pakistan, was released in November last year after 10 months. India has repeatedly asked Pakistan to take action against Saeed, who is the mastermind of the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks, in which 166 people were killed. In 2012, the US had announced a bounty of $10 million for his role in terror activities. International news: and a 20-nation meeting on North Korea, co-hosted by the US and Canada, saw foreign ministers agreeing to continue sanctions pressure on Pyongyang. US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said that the gathering in Vancouver, that the US-led pressure campaign on North Korea is having an effect. He credited the efforts with persuading North Korea to talk to South Korea about participating in the Olympic Games, which start next month. Summit diplomats met in private sessions throughout Tuesday, discussing further sanctions, a non-proliferation policy, and what steps should be taken next. In fact, along with the 20 nations represented at the meeting, the diplomatic approach has been favored by Russia and China as the proper way to ask North Korea to abandon its nuclear weapons program.
The object of negotiations, if and when we get there, is the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of North Korea. All nations here today are united on that goal. Let me be clear, we will not allow North Korea to drive a wedge through our resolve or our solidarity. We reject a freeze-for-freeze approach in which legitimate defensive military exercises are placed on the same level of equivalency as the DPRK's unlawful actions. The pressure campaign will continue until North Korea takes decisive steps to denuclearize.
And here are more international news updates in World Wrap. The United States will give the UN $60 million in aid for Palestinian refugees, but withhold a further $65 million for now. The U.S. State Department made the announcement on Tuesday as the Trump administration carried out a threat it made 2 weeks ago to cut funding. While U.S. officials did not link the decision to Trump's tweet, they made a point often advanced by the president by saying that the U.S. has been UN's single largest donor for decades and demanded other nations to do more. The war in Yemen has killed or injured more than 5,000 children and left another 400,000 severely malnourished and fighting for their lives. The UNICEF representative to Yemen said that the UN task force has reported 5,000 confirmed child deaths in Yemen since the conflict escalated in March 2015. Yemen is facing the world's worst humanitarian crisis, where 8.3 million people are entirely dependent on external food aid. And now back to our top story. Narendra Modi and Benjamin Netanyahu's one-day tour of Gujarat, and they have reached the iCreate Center, where they are going to be inaugurating that center. In fact, let's head across to that.